Art therapy is a way to heal through self-discovery, but we use it in neurodevelopmental art therapy to actually rewire the brain from trauma and rewire the brain from depression, anxiety, ADD, and ADHD.
We have all experienced our own traumatic experiences.
So the way neurodevelopmental art therapy works is the foundational building block for developing the nervous system, and then the emotional perceptual system, and then the cognition, so kids can learn the academia. It is like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've got to optimize the brain for optimal learning and mental health so they can have proper brain functioning and memory retention to be able to learn their languages so they're not completely lost. It's called cultural continuity, and they found in research that trauma recovery happens faster if we are connected to their culture.
So students, young ones, need help with that as well, to normalize, to make them feel safe, to make them trust us, can be trusted with us, so we can help them and find the right support for them. Welcome to EduLeaders Speak, the podcast where trailblazers in education share their insights and innovations. Here, we delve into the heart of teaching and learning, exploring how today's educators can inspire, empower, and transform. Today, my guest is my dear friend, Carey MacCarthy. Carey is the founder and CEO of Startup Art Therapy. Carey is a registered art therapist, licensed professional clinical counselor, author, researcher, speaker, and facilitator professionally active within the art therapy field since 2001. She is the co-author of Startup, a school-based arts curriculum for Native American youth and all cultures. Carey specializes in trauma of all ages and cultures and Native American historical and intergenerational trauma. Carey is trained in the Red Road approach to healing with Native American tribes. Carey, thank you so much for being here with me today. It's such a pleasure to have you in an actual podcast, because we connect almost every week.
Thank you, Theodora. It's so wonderful to be here with you in this capacity.
Yeah. So tell us more about, there's so much to unpack about you. And the more I know you, the more we meet, the more things I want to learn from you. And it's such a pleasure to be connecting so often. So tell us, what is art therapy and how is it connected to healing?
Yeah, so art has been used for thousands and thousands of years in healing practices, with shamanism, with daily practices for documenting history. For example, Native Americans did a winter count on buffalo hides and would document the processes and events of their tribes. It can be used, for spiritual practices, for self-discovery, but more so, then we have Frida Kahlo through time, who's a famous Mexican painter that everybody knows. She's iconic, right? And she art to, express the pain, the emotional and physical pain she was going through. But then more recently, we have art therapy as an actual profession with Margaret Naumburg and Edith Kramer, who founded in the early 1900s the actual profession and created graduate programs in psychology with it. So art therapy is a way to heal through self-discovery, but we use it in neurodevelopmental art therapy to actually rewire the brain from trauma and rewire the brain from depression, anxiety, ADD, and ADHD.
That's so impressive, so impressive. And how do you think it's more effective than talk therapy?
Well, it is actually for trauma, because trauma is stored in the right side of the brain. This has been proven by traumatic stress researchers like Bessel van der Kolk, that trauma is stored in the right side of the brain. And when you do art, which is a right brain activity, it essentially unlocks the trauma that's in the right side of the brain. And when we bring verbal expression into it, that's a left brain activity. So you're getting a dual hemispheric communication, which creates cortical consolidation. So it's communicating both sides of the brain. And then the trauma can be filed to the correct place.
Wow. That's really impressive. And for me, I haven't heard of this before. It was always a surprise whenever you mention something about how art therapy intervenes to release the trauma. It's always amazing to learn more about it. And how is startup art therapy different than any other standard art therapy?
Well, startup art therapy is based on neurodevelopmental art therapy, and that is a a method that was pioneered by Linda Chapman, who used to be my professor in graduate school 20 something years ago. And I've worked with her very closely for this whole time, 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
And she's handed over all of her work that has 35 years of government funded research, backed by neuroscientists. Alan Shore, who's a very famous neurobiologist, did the foreword of her book.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different because it's based in neuroscience. And we have research studies that show all of the different ways that, reduction of trauma symptoms and all the subsets of trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's being scientifically proven that it works, not only like the feedback you get from the people who are doing the method. That's brilliant. That's amazing. And
yes, we have qualitative and quantitative research that shows that it works because it corresponds with the 4 functioning structures of the brain. In our book that we co-authored together actually is broken down into those 4 sections that is corresponding with those 4 functioning structures of the brain. So we go from the bottom up, and then we go to left-right integration, and then people have access to the top part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, executive functioning part of the brain. Then they can go top down. So what happens with other forms of therapy, oftentimes they start from the top down, but when people are in trauma, there's a disconnect with the neural pathways where they've been damaged somewhere. So we go in, we rebuild neural structures so people have access to that part of the brain rather than starting from there.
Amazing. And it seems as if you are the right person at the right timing to connect with your mentor, right?
It was a good journey to be able to connect with her. Now she's retired and she's handed the entire body of work over to me. And if people want to get trained in neurodevelopmental art therapy in the startup art therapy system, now it's called the startup art therapy whole brain system, because I've brought in more neuroscience, a lot more, the power of consciousness, spirituality into it, and as well as cultural competence.
Amazing. And now that you work with Native Americans, how is that different to working with other groups of people?
Well, I think because this is a part of cultural competence, but cultural compassion and cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness, all of these things, and cultural knowledge, having an understanding of one's history of the population you're working with is really important, because there's so much historical trauma and intergenerational trauma. And I've lived on 2 Native American reservations and have been on the front lines in behavioral health and have seen firsthand what their struggle is. And I'm married to a Lakota man, which people who don't know what Lakota is, it's a tribe under the Sioux umbrella, the Sioux tribe in South Dakota. And I've been with the tribes for over 20 years, working spiritually and professionally. So it's very different because it's like a whole different set of issues that we deal with. So it's really important as a therapist or anybody working with diverse populations to really understand the underpinnings of what their history is and what their current struggles are, so you can best serve them.
So you have specialized your method for Native Americans, but of course it works for everybody, right?
Oh, yes. No, we're branching out. It works for everybody because everybody has the same brain, and and it reacts the same in trauma. And yeah, so I have other clients that I see on the side that are not Native American. And this is now in the state penitentiary that we have a pilot program for adults, and also for children in juvenile justice system in the juvenile detention centers. So we're not Native as well. And we just are contracting now with the government in Ukraine to bring this out to Ukrainian people and victims of war.
Yeah, congratulations for that. That was the latest, your latest achievement, your latest milestone, and best of luck with that, of course. And can you share one of like a story about a young one who has been through the process and what the results they have achieved?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I like to share this story a lot. We'll just call him P because I don't want to disclose names, but I
Yeah,
was working on
for
Pine
sure.
Ridge Reservation, and I did a brief stint, a few years with the US federal government with Indian Health Services, and I was providing school-based services. So I had been working with this boy, P, he was 9 in the 3rd grade, and we had been going through the whole curriculum of the Startup Art Therapy Manual.
Mhm.
And we had been working together for a couple of probably 6 months or so. And when suddenly he came to me and he says, um, I'm having so much trouble. He had gotten into a car accident, and he said, my uncle was drunk driving, and there was me and my little cousins in the back seat. And he lost control of the car, and suddenly him and his cousins were ejected out of the back window and were lying unconscious on the road. And he said he woke up and he saw all of his family laying there on the road. So what I did with him is I took in the middle of this manual is based on the chronic trauma treatment model on the 4 stages. So there's an actual acute trauma treatment model. So we shifted out of working from the manual into the acute
Mhm.
trauma treatment model. So he was suffering from poor concentration, um, flashbacks, nightmares. He was a mess.
Mhm.
And was telling me he was really suffering. And I said, I'm so glad that you came to me and told me. So we shifted, we did the acute trauma treatment model. And within 2 sessions, 3 sessions, his brain was able to go back to baseline and where it was before. So then he came to me and he said, thank you so much for helping me, which for a 9-year-old boy with severe behavioral problems, and disruptive, everywhere he went, he just threw his arms around me and said, thank you so much for helping me. Because
Mm.
a reduction in all of those intrusive symptoms like intrusive imagery, like flashbacks, nightmares, poor concentration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a brave move to ask for help. And maybe this is something we need to teach our young ones to ask for help whenever they feel they cannot help themselves. They need to be able to ask for help, because if this young one hadn't asked for help, hadn't shown his vulnerability, he wouldn't have been able to go through it the way he did.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And to normalize behaviors
Yeah.
and normalize experiences. I had another young boy, he was in the 6th grade, he was 11 at the same school. And I'd been working with him doing the 4-stage chronic trauma treatment model. And suddenly I found out his grandma told me, oh, are you working with him on bedwetting? He never told me that. So how to, and it's funny, it's a hard thing to get young boys, especially, to disclose some of this personal information.
Mm-hmm.
So to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So students, young ones need help with that as well, to normalize, to make them feel safe, to make them trust us that whatever they're going through can be trusted with us, so we can help them and find the right support for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the ways that I help normalize that for them is when they're talking about their feelings, when they're drawing, and, say they're drawing the car accident when P had the car accident. And I said, he's talking while he's doing it. And I said, and he's talking, I was so scared when that happened. And then I say, any little boy would be scared in that situation. So it's, how we can normalize for
Normalize.
them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To make them feel that they're not different than anybody else, that people are all experiencing, whether they're young or old, we have all experienced our own traumatic experiences, right?
Mhm.
And how has your journey influenced what you're doing right now? What was the impact of your personal journey?
So my personal journey, I've come from a pretty severe history of childhood trauma, and I've seen worse. But we all process trauma in different ways. So I, was raised by an alcoholic mother who was mentally ill and in and out of psychiatric units. And My father is autistic and he was pretty checked out. And, I was just a latchkey kid, just raising myself and, a lot of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and ended up the family, imploded. And at age 15, I ended up being on the streets and living and raising myself. So thank God, though, because, people say, oh, I'm a product of my parent, or I'm just like my mom, or I'm just like my dad. I don't have to say anything like that. And thank God I'm not like either one of them. I am definitely who I am. And it was a blessing. So I've been able to take those experiences of, being a punk rocker in the 80s and being on the streets and just, channeling this pain and, into music and art. And then have my own experiences inform me on and healing. So, devoting my whole life, I'm 52 years old almost. And now, really reaching a place of empowerment and how I can take that and be a better therapist with it and develop a lot of programs that help a lot of different ages.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this vulnerable part of your life. But you're the person who through struggles, who sees opportunities through struggles, right? So it's
the gold in the shadows.
Yes. And so it's a beautiful learning for everybody who is watching this podcast right now, who everybody's going through hard stuff. The thing is, if you're going to linger in the struggles or see the opportunities within the struggles and see how you can support others when you rise from the struggles, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I have a motto, Theodora.
Yeah.
When life gives you lemons, learn to boogie board.
Boogie board. Amazing, amazing. It's amazing how some people decide to stay, not ask for support, and stay with the struggle and with the trauma. And some others decide to move on and make changes for themselves and for others. It's amazing, yeah. And tell us a bit more about, you have mentioned, because I work with educators, and the audience is going to be leaders in education or teachers. What is one thing they can do to support their students? I would say first thing would be to teach them to ask for support, to ask for help from what I've learned from you right now. The second thing, what would it be?
Art. I mean, even if you don't go through my program or you just learn little things, it's just so important on so many levels for self-expression, self-discovery, and there's ways that it's helping in the brain that you don't know, but it's very powerful.
Yeah. And it's so sad that school doesn't prioritize art so much, and it prioritizes all the other cognitive processes. But how can the brain work on the cognitive part of it when the emotional is traumatized?
Right. Well, and then for all of your teachers out there, actually the way neurodevelopmental art therapy works is the foundational building block for developing the nervous system, and then the emotional perceptual system, and then the cognition, so kids can learn the academia. It is like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So having that nervous system developed and all those sections that correspond with the four functioning structures of the brain is crucial to learning math and science and language. And this is the point that I really hit home when I'm talking to Native Americans whose language has been lost. So I say we've got to optimize the brain for optimal learning and mental health, so they can have proper brain functioning and memory retention to be able to learn their languages so they're not completely lost. Because tribal schools have Lakota studies, or they have a language component with their traditional languages. But if their brain's not working properly, if that nervous system is not developed with the art and the very structured use of it, then or whatever modality you're using to develop the nervous system, then memory and learning can happen.
Your work is so important. You're connecting, so you're helping people connect to their roots, not only release the trauma that they're experiencing.
Right. It's called cultural continuity, and they found in research that cultures and trauma recovery happens faster if people are connected to their culture.
Wow.
And so connecting through culture through art. And so that's, what I've brought into each and every art therapy activity in the manual is I train the trainer on how to be empowered. They get to learn the system, but they can bring in their own cultural competence piece and cultural teachings into each lesson.
Wow. And I've heard you mention sometime in our previous meetings about Sandpaper and how the two-finger tracing helps our brain. Can you unpack this for us educators?
Oh my gosh, you're taking me way back to my Montessori school teacher days. Yeah, we did have that conversation, Theodora. So we were talking about the sandpaper letters in Montessori. So I used to have, 3 to 5-year-olds, and they would have their workstations, and they would trace the sandpaper letters, and it was the Danilian, like the A was like that, with the little flippy thing. So it's a sensorial art, and Maria Montessori was very interested and was very innovative of her time, bringing in all these sensorial arts because it actually sensory art ingrains in the bottom part of the brain, the cerebellum, which is responsible for physical homeostasis. And that's the building block of getting all the neural pathways formed up to that prefrontal cortex. So, and it also encodes in the brain when you're, doing the tactile sense with the art.
Yeah. And two fingers, like having two sensors.
Yeah, well, but now actually what I would probably do is not just one side, but if you really want to optimize that, do 2 A's.
Yes. Yes.
And then you say the at the same time. So this is how we used to do it is I would have 3-year-olds wanting to read so bad, and they just sit there and I'd be like, okay, and they, instead of saying A, they would say this. So it would engage the left side of the brain and that right side of the brain by doing, that was the imaginative right brain piece.
Brilliant, brilliant. And now I see how everything is connected to your big puzzle. Everything that you have done in the past has given you your pieces for this big puzzle you're building right now. And it's leading you to other countries, not only the United States, and not only working with Native American tribes and tribe schools, but also with other countries where the students are also experiencing trauma from another viewpoint, another point. So in my last phase, I have some of my favorite books here with me, and the trick I do with my guests. So you can pick one of the books and I'll explain the trick. You can just tell me the number of the book, first, third, whatever, or if you can read the titles.
Oh, me, I have to say this?
Yes.
Number 4.
4.
I see Dispenza there. I love Joe Dispenza. There's a lot of overlap actually in
True, there is. Whenever you mention something about the brain, I think I've read it somewhere. It's Joe Dispenza's books. Okay, so now give me a page number.
77.
Okay, 77, and give me a line from this page.
Like the number?
Yes.
7.
7, all right. I'm going to read, and then we will discuss whatever comes to our mind.
Okay, this is fun.
Okay. It's about, I guess, the story of a lady. So it's a case study. Jace goes quantum. And at this point, line 7, it says, "Yay, I want to be my own boss and lead my own team." Okay, now you have your clear intention. I told him every time you think of this letter J, obviously refers to something previously said. Every time you think of this letter J, can you associate the letter with the meaning you just gave it? All the specifics of what you want that you just listed. Okay, so do you want me to read it again?
No, I have all kinds of things going through my head. Well, this is really perfect in reprogramming our brains because we can create new associations with something even as innocent as the letter J. That's important, but taking that a step further, when you can recreate new associations to a trauma experience, when you think about somebody that wronged you or something, you can actually reassociate them and like wrap them around a beautiful golden light or something, or like think about something that's really positive, whatever that experience is that you have a negative association with. This is how we reprogram our brains from being triggered by it. So we can be reprogramming our brain out of trauma, but we can also be reprogramming, like he's doing, reassociating a letter J to like abundance, or I am my own boss, or something really positive. So it's depending on what you're going through in that moment, you can reprogram out of trauma and then reprogram to like abundance manifestation
as a replacement to the place of the trauma for the brain. Amazing, amazing.
I love that. That was a fun game.
Yes, and it blends so well, and it always, whatever the line, the page, the book is, it always resonates. There's always something to wake up from within. So thank you so much, Carey, for joining this podcast. It's been amazing.
Yes, I love being here with you. Every week we connect in a different capacity, and being able to hopefully impart some good stuff for your audience.
Yeah, we'll definitely do. And the way we connect every week keeps us both accountable to each other and to ourselves. And I'm just looking forward to whatever is going to come up with this.
Yes, and I'll be coming to Greece. Maybe we'll have to do a class together.
Yes, we can arrange that for sure. I'm so looking forward to meeting you face to face. And your travel to Greece is going to be in August, I guess. You haven't booked your ticket yet, but I'm so looking forward to it.
Yes, me too.
Thank you, Carey.
Thank you.